Welcome to Journey On. Today we have a wonderful guest, which has like the best spirit. And she's such a dear friend of mine. And I'm so excited to have her on here. She is just, this is how I picture her. She's just adventurous. She's compassionate, but she's also such a fireball. And I love all of that about her. I admire the fact that she's always advocated for boys and their mental health and just how they have their feelings and all of that. And I'm so excited to dive into so many different areas with her today. And thank you so much, Jessica, for being here. I appreciate it so dearly.
Thank
Um,
you. I have been looking forward to this with you.
I know it's been a while since we've chatted. So, I mean, just a background for everybody else. I know we know our stories and stuff, but just a background is that we've known each other for like, gosh, close to 7 years now. Our little ones were like
Hmm.
little, probably a few months. Well, your youngest and my oldest.
Yes.
um, but yeah, we've known each other for a while, and it wasn't until 20. I'm already diving in until 2020, where she and well, you were just such an incredible support when my brother Corporal Birch died by suicide. I don't think there's enough gratitude that I can have, or ways of showing you how supportive you were during that time.
Mhm.
And unfortunately and ironically, less than 2 years later, your husband, is it Staff Sergeant? I want to make sure I get
Yes.
his title right. So
Yes.
Staff
Yep.
Sergeant Tony Ellis died by suicide less than 2 years after my brother. And so it was
Yep.
like an ironic, circle back to where then I can unfortunately be there for you.
Hmm.
And then shortly after, you went on like this year, right? It was like a year-long RV trip.
Yeah.
Like,
Hmm.
what started that? Like, what was it, like something you guys already planned as like a family, or was it like, I need to get out of here and just go?
Yeah. After he passed away in 2022, I had nothing. Before that, I was a stay-at-home mom, and then he was gone, and then I didn't know what I was doing. I was a homeschool mom, and that was my life.
Mm.
That's what I was going to do until my kids turn 18. And then that was gone, and I had no idea who I was, what I was going to do, how I was going to do it, nothing. And my first thing was I actually put my kids in school. As a homeschool mom, that's a really hard thing to do. And but I had to do it because I wasn't equipped to do it anymore. I gave myself that first year to work on myself and my own healing, while someone else took on the responsibility of actually educating my children. And in that year, I got the help that I needed so that
And
when.
really quick, like, your
Mhm.
kids were, like, thriving, like, they were just amazing in class. Like, weren't they
Yeah.
even put in, like, or, like,
Mhm.
suggested for, like, higher grades? Because
Yes.
how your oldest was how old at that time?
He was 12 when his father passed away and turned 13 later that year. And yeah, so Joseph was entering seventh grade and reading at a 10th grade level.
Oh my
Alyssa
gosh.
was in kindergarten, and mind you, as a homeschool mom, I never taught reading or anything until 7. So she was 5 years old, entering kindergarten, and already in a testing in a first grade level for all math and reading. And Joshua
Oh my
too, he
gosh.
was above and beyond, and still is above and beyond. I think that he is 2 grade levels ahead for his reading as well. And just like all around, really amazing. Like Joseph won an award for being the most respectful kid in the school, and that's taken them from being homeschooled their whole lives. You know what I mean? I did not put them in school.
Yeah.
We're not used to like a public school environment, and they absolutely thrived in that. And that was a blessing for me because I was able to crumble and be ugly, right, while they were having a good
Yeah.
time, and like, you know what I mean, it was a good distraction. So yeah, very.
That's amazing. Like,
um
you should for sure give yourself a pat on the back for how incredible, like, your teachings and
yeah.
the structure that you had for your home.
Yeah.
um, because it shows we don't see it because we don't get to have like a scale as like homeschool moms of like, oh,
Yeah.
are we doing a good job? And then putting them
Mhm.
in a whole different type of environment like that.
Yeah.
Man, kudos to you, my friend.
Thank
That's
you.
so
And I was
amazing.
nervous about it. I really was. I was like, these kids they're feral homeschool children. They're not going to, thrive in an environment of structure and stuff like that. But no, they did amazing. And that definitely boosted my confidence and made me feel good to have like that outside perspective to say, no, mama, like you
Yeah.
did a good job. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh.
that was the first year. And, but in that year, even on the home front, it's like, daddy died and then we all kind of separated. We went into like our own rooms and our own space. And like, there was so much disconnect, your family just crumbles in front of you and you're like, you don't know how to pick up the
Yeah.
pieces, you don't know how to put it back together because it's not what it was anymore. And so I realized it
Mm.
was just we're leaving. I don't even want to be in Texas anymore. Like I'm just gonna. It was literally one day I woke up and I was like, we're getting a travel trailer and we're gonna travel around the country. And it was
Yeah.
really my way. What I tell people is the first year was for me to get collected, at least to find my grounding, my footing. Right. The second year was about really honing in on our new family life. And I felt the best way to do that is to put us in a tiny little space and have these amazing experiences across the United States. When you're traveling full time, you have to work together. You have to.
It gave me
In order
chills.
to get from one place to another, you have to work together. And
Yeah.
I really wanted to hone in on those like family building exercises with my children. Yeah, so
And
that
it
was
like forcefully brought
family.
you guys it forcefully like physically brought you guys closer together. Because
Yeah,
I know,
absolutely.
everyone grieves differently. And so there's those
Hmm.
people that will like need that closeness. And then there's those other ones
Hmm.
that will separate and isolate. I'm like more of an
Yeah,
isolator person. And so that's amazing because it also like forced you guys to now
yep.
you're in my space. Now we have to be close
Yeah.
together.
Now we have to be
Oh
it,
my
whether it's
goodness.
ugly or not. We got to do it together.
Yeah. Did you have those thoughts, like, beforehand, or were you just gun ho of, like, we're just going? Like, did you have those thoughts of, like, "Oh, this will be beneficial," or
Absolutely.
you're like, "No,
Yes.
we're going."
It was just like we're going, but it was also I did it for a purpose, right? Like I did it to make my
Yeah.
family be closer together and so that we could heal together. I really felt like our family was taken and torn apart and we needed to do something absolutely drastic and maybe even crazy sounding to someone who doesn't know so that we could rebuild what our new family looked like.
Yeah. I don't think that sounds crazy. I think that's the reality of it. Like, that's, like, the
Yeah,
raw and uncut version of grief is that
right.
it does completely tear you down,
Hmm.
and, like, it destroys your whole identity of who you were before, and you have to
Yes.
rebuild, and I think a lot of us can resist that,
Yeah.
and it's so oddly beautiful that you recognize that and was like, "Hey, we have to build
Yeah.
as this new family come the second year." That's so beautiful. Oh,
Thanks.
oh, I just wanna hug you. Oh.
Soon.
I know, you'll be here soon. Oh, and then you're gonna leave me. And so you mentioned in the first year,
Hmm.
because I know a little bit about it, but I think that other people could benefit from your experience. I know I'm kinda, like, bouncing around, but I do wanna get back to the
That's
RV
okay.
stuff, but you mentioned in the
Hmm.
first year that was focused on you. Can you share about what you did,
Home
the
base.
organization through TAPS? Can you just share a little bit about that before we keep diving into
Hmm.
your RV adventure?
Yeah, I went to my first TAPS event, and this was around suicide loss, and that's when I found out about home base, and I'm so grateful that I went because it was one of the. I sat in the truck for like almost an hour not being able to get out because I didn't want to get out and face it and look at these people. And it was just, I knew it was just going to be bad. I felt like it, but I'm so glad that I did that because that gave me the information to home base. And that next February, I went to home base. I went to home base for 2 weeks. It's an outpatient 2 week intensive therapy. I was in therapy from 7:30 in the morning until 5:30 at night, sometimes later, for 2 straight weeks. And I left. And this is their only location right now is in Boston, and so I had to leave my babies for 2 weeks. And I realized that that was a sacrifice I had to make in order for me to get better, because what I was doing wasn't helping.
That takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. It was really difficult to leave.
Yeah. I love that your mama is so supportive of you.
Yeah, she took
Your mama's
took that on.
amazing.
Yeah, she watched them, and mind you, she had a full-time job at that time. But she
Oh
also
my
knew, because
gosh.
she had been holding me this time, you know, because she knew how bad I was, and she knew how difficult things were for me, and she knew I needed to do this, even though it meant that I was going to be gone for 2 weeks. She knew that I needed that wholeheartedly. And that I will tell anybody and everyone that saved my life. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of things that we do, little things here and there, but home base is what saved my life, what gave me the tools that I needed to process my grief and my trauma, because it wasn't just grief, right?
Yeah.
This is trauma, and this came along with PTSD. This came along
Mm,
with triggers. This was, I needed to do intensive trauma therapy, and I got to do it with other spouses. And that was a big thing, because I was 28 when I became a widow. There's really not a whole lot, that's not
yeah.
common to be a young widow still raising a family. And I felt so alone. I had no one. And then to go to home base and have 10 other women just like me, 9 other women just like me, and coming from all different walks of life. Stories are different, but these are women who understand my hurt and my heart. That was just the peer support, honestly. And TAPS promotes this a lot, is how healing peer support is. And it really is. It really does heal a lot more sometimes than what we can dig into therapy. So,
That's so amazing. I'm so
mhm.
glad that you were able to do that. I remember hearing about home base, and yeah, that takes such courage to go and to be vulnerable and to be in that
Yeah.
space, but I'm so glad that it was helpful and that I mean, look at you here. And so, like, after home base, was it after that that you had that thought of, like, "Let's RV and go," or was that, like, prior to? But it just wasn't, like,
So,
lining up to that point?
by home base, I was already decided. And I don't know, I
Okay.
feel like I decided that sometime after I went to my first TAPS event, because it gave me a little bit of hope. I think being in TAPS, I feel like I was just in the dark from January until October. And then finally, this whole
Yeah.
other world was open up to me. All these people who went through suicide loss and all this help and all this everything, right? Gave me enough hope that I made a future plan. And grief, when grief comes, you don't make future plans, because you don't know what you're doing, right? Like, you're just stuck in it. And I was stuck in it for those 10 months. And then finally, after TAPS, I was like, I'm going to make a future plan. And that was a huge step in my grief. I had not gotten to that point until then. And my future plan, my one future plan, right, was, we're traveling for 1 year. We're getting an RV and we're traveling for a year. And that's all I had. I had nothing else. I didn't know. At that point, I had no idea what I was doing. But that's all I knew. But just that one plan, just that one future plan, gave me enough hope to make it happen. Right. And that was my focus then. It wasn't so much just on my grief. I feel like for the first 10 months, there was nothing but grief in my face and in my heart and in my body. Right. I could not think about or do anything else but have that there. And then finally, the second piece comes in of hope and future planning, that I was able to focus my time on another thing, focusing on planning for this trip, for making arrangements, for looking at RVs, and my time was spent differently. So by the time that I got to home base in February, I was already gung ho. My lease was up in May, I believe. And when I got home from home base, that's when I started packing. That's when I bought the RV. I bought the RV in March, and we left in June of that year.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And you made it I love so sometimes when I find things out, like, in therapy or, like, say you read a book and you find this, like, one sentence or one thing that is just like, oh my gosh, like, that's I call them golden tickets, like, that is the golden
Mhm.
ticket. And you make
Yep.
such an amazing, amazing point with grief that when you're
Mhm.
in it, it's like I always tell people like, "Oh, you're just surviving." Like, it just feels like you're floating
Mhm.
around in life, you're just surviving
Mhm.
and you're just going. Like, there's nothing
Mhm.
really coming of it, you're just doing, like, your normal tasks. But you
Mhm.
make such an amazing point about planning something, because then it's
Yeah.
like you have like something to anchor to, but then also you're
Mhm.
looking forward to the future, like
Yeah.
something joyful for the future that you're actually planning for. I thought that's so, gosh, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
That is so good. And then, so where did you guys go? Did you like set up like a map of like, I want to see these
Mhm.
places, or yeah?
So the
Tell me,
whole year
tell
was
me.
booked out before I left, because I'm a planner.
Wow.
It's just what I do. So, and it was a rough draft. Honestly, things happened that I did not expect that changed the plan a little bit. But how we went is we started in Texas, and we went from Texas to Massachusetts. Along the way, we went through Arkansas, Tennessee, Virginia, Maryland. We stayed in New Jersey for a little bit. Um, but we made it to Massachusetts, and we stayed there for about 3 weeks because Massachusetts has my heart and always will. Um, and then we went from Massachusetts, so we went coast to coast. So we left Massachusetts July 31st, and we made it to Oregon, the Oregon coast, by the end of August. So in 30 days, we went
Wow.
coast to coast. And then we went from Oregon to California, and California is where we spent the winter and a little bit longer because it just happened like that. That wasn't the plan.
Yeah.
The plan was after winter, we were going to go from California to Florida and then back home by the summer. So that was the whole trip. But, things change in that. But that's
Yeah.
our trip so far.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, how exciting. That's like, I don't know. Sometimes I think like, oh, that's so amazing to have, just to just drop everything and just go and just venture
Yeah.
and, just like a huge road trip, but like,
Hmm.
gosh, you did it. And like with your
Yeah.
4 kiddos and your mama and your, how many puppies? Like 2, right?
Two. Hmm.
Oh my god, and they're
Yep.
not little puppies. They're like
No, they're massive.
big
Max is
doggies.
a 100-pound Rottweiler.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And that's, I mean, even that takes courage, which is like,
Mhm.
I admire that so much, especially coming from grief, right? Coming from
Mhm.
grief and then also knowing, like you mentioned, like PTSD and all of that, that it's
Mhm.
like that stuff is like a smack in the face of unknown and unpredictability.
Absolutely.
And you
Oh yeah.
like ran to the storm. Like you ran through the storm of like unpredictable
Yep.
and unknown by like jumping in an
Mhm.
RV with like your family and
Mhm.
venturing across the US. Like
Mhm. And I had
that's so
never held a
admirable.
trailer
Oh my god.
before. And this is this is
So was it
isn't
attached
I'm
to a
not going to
truck?
say massive. Huh?
It's attached, it's like on a tow hitch, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the
Yeah.
type of RV you guys have? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So, I mean, it's not like massive, but it is 36 feet. And that's a
Oh
lot
my
to
god.
navigate. And
Yeah,
hauling this trailer has taught me a lot about my grief, in terms of how challenging it is and how there is unknowns. There's a lot of unknowns when it comes to, even though you can like map out your entire destination, right? From here to here, I'm going to stop at these gas stations, we're going to stop at this and do that, whatever, things can still happen, and you have to be ready for that unknown, and your plans can change really quickly, and you just have to navigate that. And so hauling this trailer has taught me a lot about my grief and has actually helped me overcome a lot of things, not just
yeah,
physically, in the physical, but also with my emotions.
yeah. Goodness. What are some challenges that you guys came across, like traveling or hauling or anything like that?
Um, First, right off the bat, is my truck could not haul my trailer. Um,
Oh my
and I
gosh.
mind you, I went to the RV park or the to buy the RV. The guy there, lifts my hood of the truck, looks at everything, and he's like, "Yeah, like your truck can definitely haul this." Our first trip getting to Arkansas, halfway through, I was like, "Ain't no way." Ain't no way. It's not happening. A 1500 Chevy, not gonna, not, no, it's,
Oh
mm-mm.
my gosh.
And, and and I talk to a lot of friends because I do have a lot of RV friends. I have, friends who haul semi trucks, and I collaborated with everybody, and I was like, this is my truck. This is how much this trailer weighs. What should I do? And they're like, unless you want to blow your transmission,
Ah,
don't do it. And so, girl, like day one, right? My whole plan is crumbling. The whole plan, my whole year, my
oh
one
my
thing, my one plan done. Okay. I've already given up my house. Like all of my stuff is in storage. I literally have this trailer and I don't know what I'm doing. And so I don't know if I shared this part with you, but I met a woman in home base who our older sons are the same age. So she has a son that's 14. She actually went on this trip with us because in home base I was talking a lot about how I was going to travel, and she just decided, you know
oh
what, I
my
don't like
god.
Oklahoma, so I'm going to travel with you. So we met in Arkansas at the same place, and we traveled together all the way up until Maryland. So we traveled together for a couple months in the beginning, and
Oh my
I was like, my plans are done. I have to take this trailer home. I have to figure out what I'm doing. Like, and I was like about ready to give up. I gave myself like 24 hours, a little bit to sleep on it. The next morning, Tawny comes to me and she goes, "My husband has a truck that can haul your trailer, and I'm too,
oh
I'm
my
not able to drive it
gosh.
myself because it makes me emotional." And
Oh
I
my
was like, "Oh
gosh.
my goodness!" So the next day after that, I was like, "Okay." So me and her took my truck and brought it to Texas or went and grabbed her truck, brought her truck and my truck to my brother in Texas, and then her and I took her husband's truck back to Arkansas. And mind you, this delayed our trip by like 2 weeks.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh.
But so like it wasn't exactly as I wanted it, but yeah, and then we got this truck, we hooked up, and then we were off to the East Coast. um
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Oh
So
my that's crazy. That's crazy how
yeah.
it just, like, perfectly lined up that she was gonna go with
Hmm.
you guys, and then she had the
The
truck
truck.
that is needed.
Hmm.
Oh my
So that,
gosh,
I mean,
that's
that was
crazy.
challenging in terms of unknowns. And I think one of the biggest challenges with that was probably navigating through gas stations. That brought me to tears. That has made me feel just so scared because, it's 36 feet, and the truck I was hauling it with wasn't diesel. So I couldn't, go through the semi truck side, and having to
Oh my
navigate through all the gas stations was just, sometimes I couldn't even fit in them and I had to go to a different one. So that was
oh
probably
my
the most
gosh.
challenging.
My god, I can't sometimes I think, like, with just our truck that we have, like, we just have,
Hmm.
like, a Ram, I don't know, probably a 1,500 Ram or something,
Yeah.
and, like, there's times where we go to, like, a small parking lot, and then, I'm panicking over a small parking lot, even though, like, I could park further out, but I cannot even
Yeah.
imagine having a whole trailer behind the truck,
Hmm.
and,
Yep.
oh gosh, and that truck didn't take diesel?
Mm-mm. Nope.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yep.
That's so crazy. Oh my gosh. Wow. What a way to start it too. And then, like,
Hmm.
to persevere through it, and, like, now we
Yep.
are what? Is this coming up on the 1st year that you guys, because
Yeah.
it was last year, right?
Hmm.
2023?
Yep. So
Oh
June
my
June 1st will be a
gosh.
whole year. Hmm. In the trailer.
Oh
Yeah.
my god. That's so amazing.
Hmm.
Ah, that's so crazy though.
I
I
know.
probably would have been, like, freaking out and, like, crying and, like
Oh, I was. I'm like on the phone with my mom and I'm just sobbing because like I had to reverse out of this gas
Oh my
station,
gosh.
and reversing a travel trailer on it's not a fifth wheel, it's just a trailer hitch, right? And
Oh my god.
yeah, so like how you're reversing, and it's just yeah.
Yeah, because it goes the opposite, right? Like, when you
Yeah,
reverse,
the
it's not just
opposite.
like, "Oh, you're like, it swings."
Mhm.
Ooh.
Yeah. And at the
Oh my
time, the cameras on the trailer weren't working, so I just had my side mirrors. And there comes a point where like you can't see no more out your side mirrors. And anyway, yeah, just sobbing. But I did it. I
oh
did
my
that.
as you're
I
reversing,
reversed
ah!
just So we just having a complete breakdown. But I did it. I reversed that 36-foot travel trailer out of the gas station, and everyone was fine.
Oh my gosh. You didn't hit anybody, right? Throughout the whole trip, you know?
Never. I didn't hit nothing.
Woo!
I didn't hit nobody. I didn't damage it in any way. Nothing.
What was your favorite, like, what was your favorite state or, like, spot that you guys stopped in or even drove through? Like, if you're like, "This is my favorite one." Was there,
Hmm.
like, the top notch
So I don't have one. I have three, and I
too?
can't make them make any more sense, right? On the top of that, maybe it is Massachusetts. I don't know, but the states that captured my heart on this trip were Arkansas, Massachusetts, and actually South Dakota. I
Wow.
just, yeah, yeah. There's something about Arkansas and their forests and just how gorgeous it is. And then same thing with Massachusetts. They have amazing trails and rivers, and that was probably the best trails that we ever went on as a family. Was in Massachusetts, and then South Dakota is just rich, right? It's just absolutely rich with things that you can go and see. And we were in South Dakota for 2 whole weeks, and we saw so many things, and we barely scratched the surface of like what's in South Dakota to see.
Wow.
So that's definitely another state that we're going to go visit a lot after our travelings are done.
So
Right.
incredible and so beautiful. How
Yeah.
fun. What was your least favorite state or, like, least area?
um Wyoming for sure. Mind you, we only drove through Wyoming, but Wyoming is nothing but nothing. There ain't nothing there. I
Oh
don't I don't even
gosh.
know if there is actually a population of people in Wyoming. I'm not sure. I didn't see any. Um but and mind you, I've heard stories of people driving through Wyoming, and it's tough for them, finding gas stations, because it's about every 100 miles that there's a gas station. That's how much
Oh
nothingness is in
gosh.
Wyoming. Okay. And when you're hauling a trailer, um, it sucks the gas. And so having to go a whole 100 miles and then finding a gas station that you can't fit in, right? And you have to go find another one, but there's not another one for another 200 miles. It was probably the most stressful. And mind you, Wyoming was probably more stressful than taking the trailer through New York in a storm. Okay. And
Oh my gosh.
New York is insane. You take one wrong turn and you got to call the cops to get you out of there. Like, you know,
Oh
it,
my
it that
gosh.
is stressful and congested, but Wyoming was being stranded in the middle of nowhere with no people. No, that was a lot more stressful for sure.
Oh my gosh. Oh, yeah, I can't even, gosh, we drove through, to Midland and here in Texas, like,
Yeah.
I wanna say, like, a week or so ago, and there was, like, there's those parts where it's like there's literally nothing, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, thank goodness I have enough gas," because,
Right.
even though there's cars, but it's like there's just
Mhm.
fields and fields and fields, and
I
it's like,
I think in
gosh.
Wyoming I pulled into that final gas station with 50 miles left. That's how bad.
Oh
That's how
my
close we were cutting
gosh.
it.
And it probably wasn't even gonna be 50 miles either, because you have to think, like, the weight, it would probably
No.
suck it down.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
Oh
I
my
was
goodness.
definitely panicking.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then your mom went with you the whole time, right? Throughout the whole adventure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was basically one day, I telling you, I woke up one day and I told mom that I was leaving on a trip with the kids, and that's what I was going to do. And I had all intentions of doing it by myself. But
Wow.
she brought, her mama energy of like, do you want to do that? And I was like, F it. Like, do you want to come? Do you want to come too? Like, if you're worried about me traveling by myself, then quit your job and let's go together.
Oh my
And
gosh. I love
so we
that.
did. Yeah.
I love that. Just I like the fact that she did, like, she just quit her job and just went with you. Like,
Yeah.
what an experience. You'll never get
Right.
that type of experience by
And that
planning,
was
like, a
another
yearly
reason.
vacation.
Yeah, that was another reason why I did it, was for the experience. My kids will never forget this, ever.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of kids out there that get to say, I got to travel the United States when I was younger. A lot of people wait till they're older
Yeah.
to do traveling like that. And yeah, I just felt like it was a once in a lifetime thing that they'd get to experience.
Yeah.
So,
Did you think that it was he? Because I'm not going to ask about the kids because I think that that's more private.
mhm,
That's their own stuff. Like, I would never hone in
absolutely.
on their grief or their
Yeah.
healing or anything like that. But do you feel that this whole traveling? I know home base did. It's totally saved your life. That did like a
Mhm,
huge amount
mhm.
of healing for you. Do you think that after that and then taking the trip have even contributed even another immense amount of healing for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will touch on the kids a little bit to say that me going to home base and then us taking this trip I've seen leaps and bounds of progress for my children's grief since
Oh,
we did that, and also my own as well. Um,
yeah.
Traveling like this has taught me so much that um, I wouldn't have learned had I not done this. And I've watched my children grow in such an amazing way since we left. I always think that they've always been great kids, right? Watching them work together in times of us really having to go through a hard time with this trip, being in Wyoming or trying to back out of that travel or the travel station, the gas station, all of that, they had to do it together, to the point that Joseph now knows how to hook up the truck to the trailer all by himself. All by
Oh my
himself.
gosh.
And it's just like the kids, I don't know, they've really grown, I think, in the year of having to all of us work together.
I think that's, like, one thing people probably think is like, "Oh, if you're in an RV, you're gonna clash or you're gonna be annoyed with
Mhm.
someone," or whatever the case
Mhm.
is.
So I don't think when we were traveling often, like a lot, like we didn't stay anywhere for
Mhm.
more than a few weeks. I think we were too busy for that to be a thing. I mean, I know that there's little things where like it's the end of our travel day. I'm trying to back up this 36-foot travel trailer to try to get it hooked up, unhooked, all the things, right? And the kids are antsy. They've been in the car for 3 hours and they're like, I don't want to be doing this no more. And they just want to
Yeah.
go run around and stretch their legs. And we have to get this trailer hooked up, or we have no electricity, which means we have no air conditioner, or we have no water if we don't hook up the RV, or we have no sewer. We can't even use the bathroom if we don't have this stuff hooked up. Um, and so that was difficult for them, and a challenge for me as well, because at the end of the day of traveling, everyone's kind of tired and everyone's a little irritated, and there's still a lot of work to do, even after the day's done. So that was probably a pretty big challenge in terms of like button heads or anything like that.
Yeah, that would be a lot. I think, like I mean, gosh, even just an hour trip. I mean, my kids are pretty
Mhm.
conditioned for, like, long drives from commuting, but it's like
Mhm.
everyone will be
Mhm.
hangry, and then we're all
Yes.
like
Yep.
everyone's on edge and stuff. Oh, did you, during that time with the traveling, did you just take the year off of schooling, or did you start homeschooling them again, or were you like, "Meh."
So that was another thing that I was thinking, like, I obviously, if we're traveling for the year, I do have to put them out of school. But at that time, how I told
Yeah,
you earlier, how in the beginning, I was like, I'm not going to be a good teacher. So I had to release that to someone who was more
yeah.
qualified than me and in that time. But I still have all the knowledge of homeschooling my children for 5, 6 years. It's still there. And by the time that second year came around, by the time I had gone through home base, I felt ready for it again. You know what I mean? I felt ready to
Wow.
homeschool my kids. And I also felt like, and this was probably a really big reason, like, how cool would it be for me to give the kids a lesson on anything, right? And then go see it, right? Like when we're in Massachusetts, let's go see the Paul Revere stuff. Or when we're in South Dakota, let's go, have a lesson about um, uh, Mount Rushmore, and let's go actually see it. That experience,
Wow.
we know that experience will last longer in the child's brain and terms of a memory than me ever sitting down with a piece of paper and them writing notes about something, right? They're going to
Wow.
remember that history lesson for a lot longer if they actually get to experience it in person. So as a homeschool mom, I ate that up and I was like, yes, we're going to have a great time, right? With learning all these things. I was so ready for it. I mean, we got to, California, and we decided to stay a little bit longer than planned. And the kids have a lot of friends here and they wanted to go to school with them. So we actually did that in October. So, or then I was like, we got to California like the end of October. So, like the beginning of November. Um, I put them in school and they've been doing that. And I don't know, it all kind of worked out.
Yeah, that's so amazing, and so nice to have, like, your guys' trip ending on, like, a familiar place and, like, around your
Yeah.
friends and their
Yeah.
friends and, um, just kinda getting back into, like, that comfort with
Yep.
them.
That has been
Oh, go ahead.
so healing to be around
Yeah.
close friends like we have been. More healing than I thought, because I think for myself, I have this very like hyper independence, don't really need anybody kind of type. And I think I forgot how important community was until I got back here.
Wow,
And that has
and
been
that's a long
healing.
time.
It is a
That's a
long
long
time, yeah.
time into your grief
Yeah.
to, like,
Yeah.
recognize that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I had another question, and then it disappeared. Um, this is our pause
Yeah.
moment. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then you guys are coming back from California. You guys are gonna come touch back on into
Yep.
Texas.
Yep.
Mm, and then you guys are venturing out from there. I don't know if you wanna
Yes.
touch on that or if that's, like, something off of
I can.
you don't have
We
to.
are planting roots. I'm actually in the process of buying a house right now. It
Ooh,
should be ready for us by the time the year would have been done, which is June. Um, and yeah, so that's pretty exciting. I'm really excited about it. I think that this is going to be a really good move for us. And I'm really looking forward to laying down roots, because
mm,
um, we've spent this whole year just, you know, traveling, and I'm ready to have like some stability now. I think my adventurous heart is ready for some solid ground.
yeah. Do you guys have,
Mhm.
well, 1, congratulations on your house. Like, that is so
Thanks.
cool, and I'm so excited for when you guys
Me
move
too.
in and seeing pictures and all of that.
Right.
I do wanna dive into we'll start off with I mean, the one thing that I admired about you for all the years that I've known you is the fact that you've always advocated for boys and, like, their mental health and them
Mhm.
having feelings and all of that. I
Mhm.
mean, you have your oldest 3 are boys. Where did that start? Was it because, like, you saw your kiddos and you're like, "Oh, hey," or, like, what sparked that drive to advocate for them?
So that actually begins with loss as well. Um, I in the span of 8 months, I lost two male friends that I had gone to school with at one
Mm,
time. And I was riddled with guilt of like, it's a normal thing to have guilt when someone commits suicide, because I had no idea anything about men's mental health, anything about male suicide, anything about that. And here I am with these three little boys and a husband who's in the military, and
mhm,
their chances of suicide are so high that I could not help myself but try to do the best that I could, to do all the research, to read all the books, to advocate to everything when it comes to male mental health. And I That's really what sparked it, was those two losses. And this wasn't like a close loss, you know what I mean? We have the circles of grief. We have like the inner grief, which are the people who are very closely connected, and then friends and family, and then acquaintances outside of that. And I really was, although I fell in like friendship zone of that, I still was kind of on the acquainted side because we hadn't talked in a long time. And but even that shook me to my core enough, right, to make this change about, I guess, that's kind of what sparked everything, in terms of wanting to learn as much about male mental health, and so that I can help my sons grow up and maybe not face that fate. So that's really what sparked that.
Wow. And the statistics are, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but they are
Mhm.
very high. And
Yes.
yeah, it's so interesting how it just, especially for like boys or just males, like it just gets swept under the rug,
Mhm.
like they're not supposed
Mhm.
to share or be vulnerable. And it's
Mhm.
like, no, it's so empowering to be vulnerable and to share
Yeah.
and be emotional. And yeah,
Mhm.
I love that you advocate so much about that, and
Mhm.
you aren't afraid to share these things. And I'm sure
Mhm.
even more so now, the fact that, you lost your spouse
Mhm.
to suicide. I'm gonna be biased that suicide comes with a whole it does come with different baggage, but it comes with a whole different
Mhm.
set of baggage that other
Absolutely.
types of death just do not come with.
Mhm.
Um, you being a spouse, so I'm a sibling with a sibling
Yes.
suicide loss, and you're a spouse with a spouse suicide loss.
Mhm.
Um, so there's, like, these misconceptions and things like that that I understand from, like, a
Mhm.
sibling
Mhm.
standpoint.
Yeah.
As a spouse, is there any, like, misconceptions or, like, that people don't understand or that we could let people know, like, "Hey, as a spouse,
Mhm.
like, this is something that, like, you guys think and
Yeah.
it's not true," or
Mhm.
maybe give them insight as to the reality that people just may not understand, especially
Yeah.
coming from a suicide like, a grieving a suicide.
Yeah. So I'll start with agreeing with you that um every loss, even if it is suicide, right? Every loss is different, whether you're a parent who lost a child, a spouse, a sibling, it's going to affect you differently. What I think a big misconception is when it comes to spousal suicide loss, and just spousal loss in general, regardless of suicide. Um, this was a person that was a part of my daily life, you know. I lived with this person. I built a life with this person. I had children with this person. And I still have to continue raising our children even after he's gone. Now, although, and this is the biggest misconception for myself, and this is going to look different to different people, right? My daily life, my daily routine was changed because of the loss of my husband. And there's people who lost him as well, but hadn't, that were close to him but hadn't seen him in a while, and him dying didn't affect their daily schedules, their daily life. It didn't change that, right? It dramatically changed my everyday life, um, because he was a part of my daily routine, and he was not there anymore. And that's a big misconception, because a lot of times we do want to, how they say that your grief is as big as your love, and that is absolutely true, but your grief is actually also as big as how often that person was in your life and in your space, and so you have to,
Yeah.
like, go back and forth with those two things of, like, my whole life got changed with that, you know what I mean? Like, I used to say this, I wish that I was someone who just loved Tony and didn't have my daily life affected by his loss, because then my life wouldn't be in shambles right now. I would be able to just grieve
Mm.
him and not have to deal with life without him in it every day. That's a really big misconception that I think a lot of people have. And I know that's kind of like teetering on it. Doesn't, not just spousal stuff. That could be, a parent who's living full time with their child, and then something like that happens. But um, another thing, and I know that you're probably asked for one, but I don't think that I can give you just one. um,
No, you're fine.
is is that this is not. I think a big thing that I've come into, is that this isn't an ex that I'm grieving. This was my husband, and he's dead.
Yeah.
You know, um, there's this isn't something that I just get over. Tony will be a part of our life until we die because that's where he should have been, right? Um, he's always, his pictures are always going to be up. He's always going to be a part of our life, you know? And not to move on to like the parenting stuff too much, but I really think it's important to say, especially for anybody who's listening and you're parenting little boys, regardless of whether they're gone through grief. A big misconception and almost a controversial thing that I've come into um, is that therapy and healing doesn't always look like just sitting on the couch with a therapist.
Mm.
Sometimes you need more than that. And especially for kids, sometimes it doesn't help them actually. Because of TAPS, I've got to listen in on a lot of adult children who lost their parents and hear their stories and listen to what they had to say about what helped when they were younger, when they lost their parent, and what didn't help. And almost all of them that spoke said that I just went to therapy every week and I didn't say anything. And it wasn't helpful. These kids almost thrive on other things like peer support. Like, don't think that just because you have your child in therapy every week that it's actually doing something. You know, sometimes
Yeah.
therapy is more and different than that. Like peer support or going, there's a lot of like different camps that you can go to for grieving children, you know. And I have found that my children have made more leaps and bounds by me meeting them where they're at and rea- doing what they needed. You know, I think that you'll probably relate to this as a homeschool mom. Um, we don't just look at our kids and say, here's the information, learn it, right? We say, this is my child and this is how they learn. And I'm going to figure out what's best and how I can prevent or present this information.
Mm.
It's the same thing with grief. I cannot come to my children and say, grieve like this and heal like this. I have to meet my children with where they're at and say this is how they're grieving and this is what they need, and maybe sitting in therapy is not what's best for them right now. Maybe they need to go to equine therapy and work with horses. Maybe they need to go on a camp with other kids who have lost their parent as well. Maybe they just need time with a male figure, a positive male role model in their life right now. Maybe they just need to go fishing right now. Whatever that is, we have to meet our children there. And I think a lot of, for me, a big misconception is, well, therapy will fix it all. And it doesn't. That's not what's going to fix my children's hearts and heal them, is just by sitting in on therapy. Therapy is so much more than just therapy sessions.
Yeah, and I mean, even like you even mentioned back when we were talking about the RV trip that
Hmm.
you found so much healing in that. And I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't travel, but I mean, even gardening or doing things here on the
Hmm.
property that it's like I find so
Hmm.
much healing in that with little bits
Hmm.
of my grief. And it's like,
Yeah.
just like you said, like we can find and heal through so many different things. And I mean,
Yeah.
both of us have, I mean, you've previously done, is like a Waldorf homeschooling that a lot of
Yes.
that is also like movement and that creativity.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's like it goes hand in hand with grief that it's like there's so many
Yeah.
different outlets to
Yeah.
get that energy out, to get that feelings out and process
Hmm.
them and do all of that. I think it's amazing that you have been able to tune in, but I mean, you've also
Hmm.
tuned in with your child, well, all your children from
Hmm.
homeschooling that it's like
Yeah.
you know how to meet them where they're at. I know that it has come with so many challenges and gosh, my heart has always gone out to you guys because I mean, my difference, I like that you brought that up really quick. I like that you brought up that as a spouse, you lost somebody that is constantly in your daily life.
Hmm.
And me losing a sibling, like, yeah, that is such a big one, right? I don't think anyone's grief
Yeah.
is like you said, the circles. I thought that was
Hmm.
great, right? Like everyone's in
Hmm.
your small circle, and then what is it? Like friends are on the outer circle, and then
Hmm.
like acquaintances are on the outer.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
that it's like, yeah, losing a sibling is hard. Like I knew him my whole life up into
Hmm.
that point. That it's like it comes with certain baggage, but also, like, he
Hmm.
didn't impact my every single day. Yeah, we
Hmm.
talked maybe a few times a week. I saw him a
Hmm.
lot when he was living close by me,
Hmm.
and so he was very involved, but
Hmm.
it didn't disrupt my daily functioning. Meals
Hmm.
weren't changed because he
Hmm.
wasn't in our life. yeah, it
Yeah.
sucks. Like, it
Mhm.
sucks, it's
Mhm.
horrible, it's
Mhm.
heartbreaking, but it also like you said, it didn't affect my every single daily function. I mean, your sleep,
Mhm.
I know,
Yeah.
that's gonna impact your sleep as well as your kids'
Mhm.
sleep, and just
Yeah.
literally every single thing, and,
Mhm.
um, I know, like, grief can make people be like, "Oh, it's all about me," but
Mhm.
that is such a big point that I think a lot of people
Mhm.
don't recognize with spouses is, the
Mhm.
focus will for sure be on the kids, but, like, also the
Right.
spouses have to now function without that second person.
Mhm.
Um, because Tony was in the Army
Mhm.
and he would get deployed, have
Mhm.
people ever made comments about that? I feel like people can be very nasty, especially with
Mm.
suicide. Has people ever made comments about like, "Oh, well, he's gotten deployed, so you're kind of used to him not being there?" Have Because I know people could say some crazy stuff. So this is just a random.
I don't think I've come across questions like that, in terms of, um, like, things like that. I think, and maybe if people thought that, they just haven't told me, because you know how almost aggressive I am with
A
sharing
fireball.
my my,
Yeah,
where we're at. I don't think anybody would, um come to me and say something like that. I
yeah,
do know, especially in my parenting, people had come and tried to tell me, what I should do, when they're not living with me. They're not helping
mm,
me raise my babies, and this is something I said really early on. Unless you're here helping me raise these babies, I don't want to hear it. Right?
yeah,
You need to go raise your own babies with the life that they have. Your children do not have the life that my children have. Um,
yeah,
and that's probably a more bigger thing in terms of what people have said about, my children and what they think they need, not what they actually
yeah.
need, because they're nowhere to be found. They're nobody. No, all these people who are saying things are not here.
They have something, they have input, but they're not gonna show up, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
glad no one
yeah,
has mentioned that because I've seen stuff like that on different, I mean, I have,
yeah,
the algorithms, of course, like,
absolutely.
in the suicide community and prevention and all of
Hmm.
that, that it's like, I've seen comments of people saying that stuff, "Oh,
Yeah.
well," and I'm like, "How could you be so nasty?" It doesn't matter if they're deployed,
Mm,
they're still
mm-mm.
involved, or when they come
Mhm.
back home, they are still
Yeah.
involved, like, when someone is not here anymore, that changes
Mhm.
everything, and I'm like, it's it's disgusting how, heartless some people can be and make those types of comments,
Mm.
so I'm like, I hope, I mean, you are a fireball, I should have thought about that in the beginning. Who would try to test you? I mean, if they did, they'd be in on a good one 'cause, whew,
Yeah.
that would be
Well, and
that'd be interesting.
I have been. I
Yeah.
know that you were there when you saw when those, and this was on Facebook, when those people came for me to tell me what for
Oof,
about my parenting, and I made sure that the record was set straight very quickly. And I
yeah,
have stood by this girl since the beginning, and I've always kind of stood by it, but especially after Tony died, that we have to hold the people in grief that are grieving, right? We cannot come and just try to sugarcoat it. We can't come and say things like, "Well, he was deployed all the time, so you're used to being him gone, right?" Or, maybe you should be doing this instead of what you're doing with your children. Um, there's things that are not helpful, right? If you are not coming to a griever to 100% hold and give them what they need, then don't say it, because you damage them. You damage them. There's been a lots of things that I've seen online, or um you know anywhere, really, not things that were said to me, but I am triggered by them. I get so
mhm,
upset with some people who are just, the things that they say about suicide, or the things that they say about loss. And this is why I mentioned the whole ex thing, because that's something that really got me riled up, were people who
cool,
would mention, like, well, I can't, like, get remarried now because I have a memorial tattoo for my husband. And they're like, if you're going to get a memorial tattoo for, like, your your spouse, then you should never date again. And I'm like, no, I don't think like, and this was, I wasn't involved in this, is just me watching, right? These are real opinions of
Mhm.
people. And I don't understand that. I don't understand how you could not hold space for a spouse that died. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um, I could not imagine not getting a tattoo for him. Of course, I'm going to get a tattoo for him. Why? Because the tattoo's forever and he will be dead forever.
Mm.
He's not
Mic
coming
drop.
back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not coming
Yeah.
back. This isn't a tattoo of my ex, right? This is a tattoo of my husband who will be dead forever. Like that's just what it is. It's different.
I love your boundaries. I admire that too
Oh,
about you. You're just
thank you.
if I could just, have like a little bit of fireball of Jessica, that would be people don't
Oh,
mess
thank
with
you for
you.
saying
They
that.
test you, but they know that like you're gonna fire back, which I like. I
Yeah.
like that. You're not one to mess with. It's like you have this perfect balance of like just such sweet and gentleness and compassion, especially like around your kiddos. I love seeing like how you mommy
Yeah.
you with your kiddos, and
Yeah.
like it's just so sweet. And then it's like, but like the mama bear, like oof,
Yeah.
it's like a
Mhm.
mama fireball. Just you will definitely come out, which I love. I love that, and it's great,
Yeah.
especially with this whole grief stuff. That it's like you have to be on your like
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
p's and q's with people, and you have to like solidify those boundaries with people because
Yeah. Mhm.
they will contribute negatively to your grief and your
Absolutely.
healing and all of that.
Absolutely.
Um, and with grief, like I know you crumbled in the first year for sure. I
Mhm.
mean,
Mhm.
totally understandable.
Mhm.
How has it been to navigate, or if like there was another mom that's like their kids are
Mhm.
grieving too?
Mhm.
Because I cannot imagine. Like I know I'm grieving, but like my kids aren't really grieving the loss
Mhm.
of my brother, right? Your
Mhm.
kiddos are grieving the loss of their daddy.
Mhm.
How have you been able to navigate, or like what tools do you have to navigate not only just your grief, because you have to put your ish
Mhm.
aside
Yeah.
to attend to them as
Mhm.
like little mini grievers, and like you
Mhm.
said, like you have to address them each individually. um
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, can you touch on that?
Yeah. So, and we can talk about a little bit what we did earlier, that everyone's grief is different. That means that even though lots of people lost Tony, right? Lots of people did, but their grief is different. And for the four children of mine, they all lost their dad, but their grief is entirely different. The way that they navigate their grief is entirely different. The way that I have to meet
Mm.
them is entirely different, right?
And
A
their
big
ages,
thing,
like they're in
and their
different
ages.
ages too, so they're gonna take it
Absolutely.
on different.
So you have different stages of mental capacity, right? Of understanding. Alyssa was 4 when her daddy died. She did not have the language or
Wow.
even the comprehension at that time to be able.
Mm.
So her grief looked way different than Joseph, who was 12 at the time. He was way more understanding than Alyssa was. um, but her grief is still just as valid as his grief is, and I still have to meet them in those spaces. A big thing that I think has helped in terms of parenting grieving children while I'm also grieving alongside of them is, I'm probably just as raw with them as I am on Facebook, or
Mm.
social media, or with you. I don't hold back when it comes to crying. There are days where I can't do it, right? And I'm just sobbing. And they come into me and they say, "Mama, what's wrong?" And I say, "I miss daddy today." And so mom is crying
Mm.
today because mama misses daddy. And I'm always honest with them. And there's some times they come in and I'm like, I'm just really mad at daddy right now. Like I'm really mad at him. And so I'm crying about it. Okay. Like I miss him and I'm mad at him at the same time, like, because that's grief too, grief, anger is a part of
Yeah.
grief. And I don't sugarcoat my emotions with them. I do believe that there are things that are child appropriate. I would not go into details that are not appropriate for children. But on the surface level, yes, I am sad. And I think that has allowed my children to know that they can meet me in grief and they can come to me. Even Joseph being 14 now, if he's having a hard time and he's missing his daddy, guess who's he's coming? He's coming right to my room
Mm.
and saying, "Mama, I miss Daddy." And that's when I meet him. That's when I say, "Okay, like let's do something." But that's rare. Okay, that's not as often as him saying, "Mommy, like I really need to go fishing," or "Mommy, like I really need to go for a hike." Things that I know remind him of his dad. I have to make space for that. I have to make room for that when he's not telling me with his words, "Mom, I miss Dad" right now, but he is telling me with his words. I have to read between the lines when he's asking me to go fishing all the time, and I'm just like, fishing is one of those things where I'm not very good at it, and it takes a lot of work to take 4 kids to the lake and all the fishing poles and all the things I have to go into it. But I have to listen to what he's needing right now. That is another type of therapy, is him saying, "This is what I need to grieve," and me saying, "Okay, baby, let's go do that then." I'm not asking questions. Sometimes kids don't need to talk about it. And that's a big thing that I think a lot of people that, well, they aren't not talking to me. They need to be talking to me. Something that the he's a doctor through TABS, a childhood psychologist, and he's like the head child grief camp person. I can't remember his name, but I'm sure you've met him. He mentioned that just because um, the loudest grief doesn't mean it's worse. So, like, quiet grief
Mm.
doesn't mean it's better. So, these kids could still be getting good grades. These kids could still be good listeners. That doesn't mean that their grief is quiet, right? And just because another child's grief is very loud and very open doesn't mean their grief is worse, right? And I've really taken
Mhm.
that to heart in my parenting and saying, just because one child seems like they're doing great doesn't mean they're doing better than my child who's being loud right now. You know, they could still be having the same issues, and really honing in and listening to the things that they're not saying. That's really helped. So being vulnerable myself and being unapologetic about my emotions allows them to have that space to be unapologetic and safe in their emotions and know that it's okay to have a breakdown and be upset about things. And then on the other side of really listening to the things that they aren't saying has helped us grieve together, I guess.
Yeah. That's like it's beautiful in its own, like, I mean, it's a terrible thing, but it's
Yeah.
it's so beautiful how you're able to show up for them. Because I
Yeah.
think, like, there's so many people that can't sit with those big emotions. I mean, they can't
Hmm.
even, there's a lot of people that can't even sit with a child's tantrum, let
Yeah.
alone you give them this
Really.
baggage of grief and then say, "Oh, hey, you're supposed to tend to your child." And
Hmm.
I think you just do. I don't wanna say this, but I do wanna say it because it's not like we're carrying it like, "Oh, we're doing such a good job," right? I hated when people were like, "You're doing great," and it's like,
Hmm. Hmm.
what else am I supposed to do? You, like, throw your hands
Right.
up. But I think you're doing just such an amazing job on how you tend to your children, and you
Thank
see
you.
them where you're where they are at, and
Hmm.
you know your child best, and you know when
Yeah.
they need something that they're not actually saying to you. Like, you've always been so
Yeah.
in tune with them, and it's so
Uh-huh.
beautiful to see,
Yeah.
um,
Thank you.
beforehand and then even through this tragic journey of
Mhm.
grief that you guys have
Yeah.
had, and I love that they come to you,
Yeah.
um, as, like, their mama because, yeah,
Hmm.
you think, like, I mean, a lot of people just wanna, like you said, like, send them off to therapy, and it's like, that's not just gonna like, that's just not it. Like, you can't just do
No.
therapy and be like,
Mm-mm.
"Oh, check that off the box, and then now I'm all healed and everything."
No.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
No.
Gosh. Is there any other baggage that you think comes with either with grief, like, either with parenting, like, the parenting aspect, or, um, as, like, a spouse that you wanted to touch on or that you didn't bring up or anything?
Um, baggage, I think parenting just becomes harder because you don't have that other person, and they just do not have a father figure. They just do not have a dad. They do not have their dad, you know? And I think as a single mom now, it becomes frustrating, why aren't you here? Like I don't want to be raising
Mhm.
these babies by myself, and almost like bitter about it. I think that
Mhm.
that baggage comes. Um, as a spouse, I think that the hardest thing in terms of baggage is like this was the person I chose to spend my life with. And when I said death do us part, I thought we were going to be old. And I thought we were going to have
Mhm.
grown children by then. I didn't think I was going to have to say till death do us part when we're still actively raising children together.
Yeah.
And I'm not even 30. I was 28, when he died. And so like that was not a part of the life plan. You know what I mean? That was not how I saw my life
Mhm.
going. So in terms of like extra baggage, I think um, and you just don't have somebody to build with. It's all by yourself now. You don't have someone to say, "Hey, is this a good idea? Should we do this?" Right now in terms of me buying a house, I don't have him to say that. You know what I mean? Like, is this a good idea? I have to it's all on me. I have to
Mhm.
100% make sure that me and the kids are good and me and the kids are healthy and thriving, through all of this. And I don't really have anybody to bounce that off of. So, um, yeah, I think that's kind of extra baggage there.
Yeah. So down to my last few questions. Um,
Yes.
throughout this whole journey, like your grief journey, for sure. It could
Mhm.
include like the RV trip or whatever the case is. What's one
Mhm.
skill or quality that you acquired like on this whole journey that I guess you're grateful for or that has been beneficial or anything?
um, I
Or like
think that I'm
tool?
gonna
Like,
a tool. I'm probably gonna say something that you're not expecting.
do it. Say
um,
it.
I a skill that I acquired, and maybe a belief is my boundaries, honestly, throughout this
Mm,
trip, and that I don't care anymore, and I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry for how I live my life. I'm not sorry for how I raise my kids. I'm not sorry for what I do to stay alive. I'm not sorry for what I did to keep myself alive. I'm
yeah.
and I'm not sorry for the people that I had to leave behind because they were not good people. I That's probably the biggest skill, and I needed to learn those things because I could not be making the moves that I'm making now had I not said, no, this is not okay, and we're not going to do it anymore. And I deserve better than the places I'm sitting in. And that has refined. I feel like I've just done this refining process throughout this 2 years of just saying, um, getting very specific, right, on who I am, who I want to be, and the people that I want around, right? I want people who are uplifting and on my at my table. I want people who I matter to. That's probably the biggest thing for me, especially because before this, I just naturally was a people pleaser, and I think anybody could look at me now and probably not think that. But I think that was the most beneficial because, and this is things that I tell new grievers now, is F everybody else. Because the only thing, especially parents who lost our spouses who are still raising children, the only thing that matters is your health and theirs. And you can't help them as well as you need to if you're not good. So nobody else matters. Shut them up, cut them off. I don't care. Your main focus has to be those kids. And if that means you have to do drastic things, then do drastic things.
Yeah. That's so
Do the
important.
crazy things.
That's a good one to have acquired, and, I mean, just based off of what you're saying is, like, you concreted those boundaries, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Don't let anybody pass through,"
Mhm.
which is
Yeah.
great. I think I've said that many times to mentees is like
Mhm.
boundaries. Like you
Yeah.
could see when boundaries are pushed or there's not a solid boundary, and it's like
Mhm.
if you have those, it's so important for
Right.
your own sanity and your own mental
Right.
health and your grief in general. Um,
Mhm.
Grief really shows what boundaries you do or don't have.
Yeah.
Um, that's a great skill to have acquired. I'm so excited for you and, what you guys have coming up and all of that. Um, one random question that I thought of, are you a TAPS mentor?
I'm going to be in May. So the
Ooh,
national event that's coming up, yeah,
yes,
is I signed up for that, which is funny because like the first year I went, I was like definitely not ready for that. And then
yeah,
so that was like October of 2022. And then I went to October of 2023, and I was like, I'm at the time where I could do it now. But I still didn't feel ready for that. But now it's coming up, and I'm like, you know what? I'm ready for that. And I think that I need to do this. I think it's time for me
yeah,
to be a mentor and help other people, because I know that peer mentor support is a huge thing for me. That helped me so much. And I want to be able to offer that same help to new people, new grievers.
yeah. That's amazing, congratulations, I'm so excited for you. Are you going to
Thanks.
Memorial Day weekend for the
Yes,
big
in
national?
Virginia.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh, that's awesome.
Yep.
We're gonna miss you. We were gonna go, but we're not gonna I'm gonna go do the one in San Antonio,
Oh, nice,
in
nice.
October.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah, I'll probably
so
still go to the one in San Antonio as well. It's just that was a big, 30-year thing that they're doing. And
yeah,
I really wanted the kids to be there for Memorial Day. So I'm definitely
yeah,
looking
that's
forward to it
amazing.
for sure. Hmm.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I can't wait to see pictures and,
Yeah.
hear all about it when that comes up. Um,
Me too.
all right, my last question, my friend.
Okay.
Except for there's gonna be many more, but not on here. Um,
Yeah.
what's one thing that you would suggest what's one thing that you would suggest to any listener to inspire them to journey on?
um, this one may be simple, but it is complex. Um, I would say to give yourself grace, and to meet
Mm,
yourself where you're at. That means sometimes you're going to have to sit with the suck. And that means that you have to give yourself grace when you haven't done the dishes, or you went out a lot this week, or um, you used unhealthy coping mechanisms, or you didn't work out, or you just have been in bed crying for a week, whatever it is, or you're really angry, right? You're just really angry about it. You have to give yourself grace for all of those things. You have to give yourself grace for choices you've made. You have to meet yourself where you're at, because you're never going to get move forward if you continue to just hate on yourself for how you're coping, and hate on yourself for and tell yourself like you wish you could be better. And mind you, this is advice that I'm still taking. Even last month I got to this point where I missed him a lot, and I hated having a parent without him. And I just was a day that I was just so, it ached very big. The hurt was very big. And I realized in that moment that I'm not just sad, but this work of grieving has become tedious. And I'm exhausted by
right,
it being 2 years later. And I'm still
yeah,
crying about him like I was the day that he died. So much I can't take a breath, and so much that there's no more air left in my lungs, crying. And I, it becomes mentally exhausting. And so giving myself grace and saying it's okay for you to still cry about it like this, and it's okay for it to still hurt like this. Um, I have to meet myself there, because if I continue to just, yeah, I have to sit in the suck. I have to not, I don't want to use the word embrace it, because it doesn't feel like embracing it. It feels ugly. It feels really gross. And I'm but you have to sit with grief at this point. I believe that grief is just another part of ourselves, and we have to sit with it, and we have to
mm,
accept it, and we have to be okay with the grief that is us now, that part of us that is grief. So if you ever stand a chance of journeying on, you'll have to give yourself grace first.
That's beautiful. Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for such good like wisdom and insight, especially coming from losing a spouse, not just losing a spouse, but losing a spouse to suicide and a
Mhm.
military spouse. Like that's a whole other, that's just there's different baggage that includes all of that. And I
Mhm.
appreciate and um am just so grateful for you coming on here and being vulnerable and
Mhm.
sharing so much. I don't think we dove deep at all throughout the last few years into grief or anything like that with
Mhm.
each other.
Mhm. Mhm.
um, but I appreciate you coming on here and sharing so much wisdom for everybody else,
Absolutely.
and just being so selfless. And I appreciate
Thank you.
you. And
I
then until
appreciate you.
next time.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me do this. I have been watching your podcast for since you basically released it, and I just love that you are doing this. I think that you're a real way paver. You're paving the way for a lot of people. So I really appreciate you and the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. And then until
All
next
right.
time.